The night the storm warnings hit, I was already out stacking sandbags. The sky had that eerie green tint that told you it wasn't bluffing. I'd seen flash floods tear through this neighborhood before, and I wasn't about to let it happen again. But just as I was laying the final line by the curb, headlights flashed across my yard, and out stepped Patricia Hendress, our self-appointed HOA queen, umbrella in one hand and a clipboard in the other. "Mr. Daniels," she called out, in that nasal tone that could curdle milk. "Those sandbags are a violation of community aesthetics. Remove them immediately." I blinked rain out of my eyes. "They're protecting my house, Patricia. We're under a flood warning." Her lips pinched like she'd swallowed a lemon. "The HOA rules are clear. No obstructions on property frontage. Sandbags included." I laughed, thinking she had to be joking. She wasn't. She pointed to the fine print on her clipboard as thunder rolled overhead. "You've been warned before about unsightly materials. This is your final notice." "Unsightly?" I snapped. "You'll think unsightly when the street's a river and your basement's an aquarium." But Patricia just smirked. "Rules are rules, Mr. Daniels. Remove them or face fines." I stared at her, soaked to the bone, water already pooling by the sidewalk. "You want them gone? Fine." I kicked one of the bags aside and gestured at the rest. "Enjoy your view." By morning, the storm had come full force. The cul-de-sac turned into a brown, churning lake. I stayed up all night watching from my window as rain hammered down. Patricia's house, 2 doors down, sat at the bottom of a gentle slope, the perfect spot for runoff. Around 4 a.m., I saw her porch light flicker on. Then her front door burst open, and Patricia stepped out, ankle-deep in water, shrieking for help. The sandbags she'd banned could have stopped the torrent now, gushing into her basement. I grabbed my phone and took a photo through the rain-smeared glass. I wasn't cruel, but Karma? Karma had a wicked sense of humor. By sunrise, she was standing in her driveway, soaked, hair plastered flat, yelling into her phone at the HOA maintenance crew that never showed up. Meanwhile, my property was dry as toast, thanks to the unsightly sandbags still sitting snugly around my porch. And that's when I realized this wasn't over. Patricia wasn't the type to take public embarrassment lying down. By noon, the rain had finally stopped, but the damage was done. Patricia's front yard looked like a disaster zone. Mud, debris, and what used to be her flower beds now buried under a foot of muck. Her basement pumps were running non-stop, and her driveway shimmered like a shallow pond. When I stepped outside to check my mailbox, she was already waiting, arms crossed, jaw set, eyes full of fire. "Morning," I said, trying not to grin. She jabbed a finger toward me. "This is your fault, Daniels." I almost laughed. "My fault? You banned my sandbags." She huffed, water dripping from her designer raincoat. "Your sandbags redirected water into my property." "That's vandalism!" I blinked. "You think gravity's my accomplice now?" But Patricia wasn't joking. She started snapping pictures of my yard like some flood detective. Then she whipped out her phone and started calling every HOA board member she could reach. Within an hour, 3 of them showed up. Clipboard warriors, just like her. They huddled near her driveway, muttering and shaking their heads dramatically. Then Patricia pointed at me like I was a suspect in a lineup. "He deliberately diverted stormwater with unauthorized barriers," she said. "That's a clear violation of Section 9A. I leaned against my fence. "Section 9A doesn't mention common sense, huh?" The board members tried to look official, but it was obvious none of them wanted to wade into a mud pit to inspect the scene. One of them, Dave, whispered something about liability and backed away. Patricia wasn't letting up. "We'll be issuing fines and demanding immediate removal of those sandbags. You caused structural flooding to community property." I couldn't help but chuckle. "Community property? You mean your basement?" Her nostrils flared. "You'll be hearing from the HOA attorney." I tipped my cap. "I look forward to it." By afternoon, a notice was taped to my front door. An official HOA, violation and damages review. The best part? It was printed on fancy letterhead, as if that made it less ridiculous. But while Patricia was drafting complaints, the rest of the neighbors were busy talking. I caught snippets of conversation all day, people laughing, whispering about her house turning into an indoor pool. Someone even joked about her holding water aerobics classes in her basement. The tide, quite literally, had turned. Patricia wanted a war. She didn't realize she'd just handed me all the ammunition I needed. The HOA called an emergency meeting 2 days later. Patricia made sure it was mandatory for all residents, probably hoping to rally her troops. The flyer on my door read, "Community Flood Response Discussion." Cute name for a witch hunt. I showed up early, mostly because I wanted the front row seat to whatever nonsense Patricia was about to unleash. The meeting was held in the clubhouse. Fluorescent lights humming, folding chairs lined up in neat rows, and Patricia standing at the front with a slideshow ready. When I walked in, she gave me that icy HOA smile. "Glad you could make it. Mr. Daniels, I hope you'll have a chance to explain yourself before the community." "Oh, I plan to," I said, settling in. Once everyone arrived, she launched into her presentation. Picture after picture of flooded rooms, ruined furniture, and, of course, my illegal sandbags. She spoke like a prosecutor at trial. "As you can all see," she declared dramatically, "Mr. Daniels's unauthorized flood barriers redirected storm runoff, resulting in extensive damage to community property, namely, my residents." A few people chuckled quietly. Patricia heard them and tightened her lips. I waited until she finished her speech, then raised my hand. "May I respond?" She sighed. "Briefly." I stood up, holding my phone. "I just want to share something with the community." I tapped the screen, and the photo I'd taken during the storm appeared on the projector. Patricia, standing on her porch at 4 a.m., water up to her ankles, screaming for help. The room went dead silent. Then someone snorted. "This," I said, pointing at the photo, "was taken after Patricia forced me to remove sandbags meant to prevent flooding. Her words were, and I quote, 'unsightly materials.'" A few gasps rippled through the room. Someone whispered, "She did say that to me once about my lawn chairs." Patricia turned crimson. "That's irrelevant," she snapped. "You had no authorization." "Actually," interrupted Dave, one of the quieter board members, "Section 12 allows emergency measures to prevent property damage." "You overstepped, Patricia." Now the murmurs turned to open laughter. Even the HOA treasurer hid a grin. Patricia's slideshow suddenly didn't look so convincing anymore. By the time the meeting ended, the board voted to rescind my violation and open a review into Patricia's misuse of authority. She stormed out, heels splashing through a puddle outside the clubhouse, muttering about ingrates. For the first time in months, the neighborhood felt lighter. But deep down, I knew Patricia wasn't done. People like her never quit. They just regroup. 3 days after the hearing, a white pickup rolled up to Patricia's driveway. The side read, "State Mutual Insurance, Property Claims Division." I was trimming my hedges, purely coincidentally, when the adjuster stepped out with a clipboard and a camera. Patricia followed him, looking nervous but trying to play the part of the poor, mistreated homeowner. I couldn't hear everything, but I caught snippets. "Yes, the flood damage was catastrophic," she said. "It was caused by my neighbor's unauthorized water diversion." The adjuster nodded politely, then began inspecting. He took one look at the slope of the land, the clogged storm drain, and the neat line where my sandbags would have been. And I saw the exact moment his expression changed. He turned to Patricia and asked, "Ma'am, did you instruct your neighbor to remove his flood barriers before the storm?" She hesitated. "Well, yes, but they were against HOA guidelines." He scribbled something down. "So you overrode a protective measure during an active flood warning?" Her mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. "That's not how it—" He interrupted gently, professional but cold. "We can't classify this as an external cause. Negligence voids the claim. I'll have to report this to your carrier." That's when I knew the universe was done being subtle. Patricia's face drained of color. "You mean you won't cover the damage?" The adjuster shook his head. "Not if it was preventable." He took a few more photos, thanked her and drove off, leaving her standing there in muddy slippers, staring at her house like it had betrayed her. Later that week, word spread fast. Patricia's insurance wasn't paying a dime. To make things worse, the HOA board suspended her pending investigation for overreach and property negligence. The same people who used to jump when she called now avoided eye contact. I ran into Dave at the mailbox. He chuckled. She's trying to blame environmental sabotage. Guess Gravity's back on your payroll. I grinned. Tell her I'll send Gravity an invoice. The following weekend, I saw movers hauling out Patricia's furniture. Her temporary relocation, she called it. The neighborhood didn't seem too heartbroken. Someone even left a box of pool noodles on her porch with a note. For the next flood, try these instead of HOA rules. As for me, the Sandbags stayed right where they belonged. The HOA officially updated its policy. 2. Emergency property protection was now fully permitted. So yeah, Patricia banned my Sandbags and karma gave her a swimming pool. Some lessons, it seems, have to be learned the wet way. If you enjoyed watching this chaos unfold, make sure to hit that like button. It really helps. Don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss another wild HOA story. And I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below. Would you have handled Karen the same way? Or done something even crazier? Let me know!